excited. We've got Jessie back, our returning guest, our first returning guest here on the Deep Life.
Welcome, Jessie.
I'm so excited. I'm so excited. Thank you. Thank you for having me again.
And I feel like we're going to get into a lot of tapping into this superhuman higher self that everybody talks about in the spirituality and wellness community, and kind of dissecting that and getting really deep on how that's going to help the ascension process, and where we can kind of work on our shadow self and looking at like choices we make and all of these fabulous things.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. So I think maybe first starting off, like your giving your point of view, especially this is kind of your expertise in how we can really tap into that vibrational frequency of raising the energy within and around our bodies to tap into that higher aspect of ourselves.
Yep, definitely. When we spoke last, I had kind of laid out several categories that are influencing our ability to operate at a high frequency and kind of go through this, what we call the ascension process that everybody's working their way through. And we'll review a little bit of some of the foundations of the principles of which I work and treat people. And those are all based off of energy, frequency, vibration.
That would be great. Yes. Love that.
Right. So everything in this universe, we just have to come to accept this. Everything in this universe is a frequency. It's hard for a 3D mind to understand that there is something more than just a solid object. The solid object is our perception of a group of frequencies that we just interpret and turn into this object, right? We are frequency, we are vibration. And within that, there are multiple subcategories of frequencies and vibrations that are within us. You can think of every organ and system in your body as being a different set of frequencies and a different, all resonating at a slightly different vibration. Everything is resonating. Everything is vibrating in some way or another. The planet, we measure the vibration of the planet, the frequency that the planet is emitting through the Schumann resonance. And that's a chart that measures the fluctuations of the frequency of our planet. We measure things in wavelength. Everything that we can see is a visible spectrum of different wavelengths, which are different vibrations or different frequencies. We interpret sounds, which are just frequencies and vibrations, through our ears. And we also know that there are frequencies that we cannot, that we can't see, that we can't hear, that we can't necessarily feel. They are out of our spectrum of comprehension, let's say.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that they don't exist just because we can't interact with them easily, let's say, because it's believed and it's documented throughout, thousands and thousands of years of spiritual growth and development that you can tap into the frequencies that you can't see or hear.
Yeah, exactly. It's just almost shifting that frequency of different brainwave patterns to get up into like the highest state, or at least that's one of the ways.
For sure. Absolutely. Because again, that's another like subfolder of our brain has all of these different frequency patterns and different ways of operating that take us to different states of awareness and consciousness.
Yes.
Right? From sleep to fully awake. And then beyond that, the more transcendent states, our brain is operating at a totally different frequency.
Yeah.
So everything is frequency, right?
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. There's a couple of things you said there that I want to kind of lean into a little bit, just to help give the listeners more of a deeper picture.
Yes.
So when we're talking about everything that we see is different spectrums of light, but it's only a really small part of the entire spectrum. Where, just to kind of give people an understanding, everything that we can see is actually less than 1% of all the light. We see this one small little sliver of the entire spectrum. So like different animals are all seeing different parts of the spectrum, and their entire reality is completely different.
So true.
And then the other thing you're talking about, just like what we see in the 3D world is solid form, but everything that we see that's solid is literally 99.9% empty space.
Exactly.
And we are just perceiving, like we see a table and we think table, but really we're seeing the pattern of vibration that our brain is translating into solid table.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is,
and it's awesome.
It's so cool. I feel like if
so
people
true.
realize that, and hopefully this plants the seed, like, how cool is that? Like that our humanness, like the, divine creator has gifted us with these, I don't want to say abilities, but almost in a way to perceive things in different ways. It's just, it's so cool. And I love learning things like this.
Definitely. When you zoom out and you look at all of the special skills and talents that we just as humans have, it's a very wide spectrum of really cool stuff that we can tap into.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
And there's believed to be so much more. So we tend to, as mind expanding as some of these concepts are, they are difficult to get to if we're stuck behind certain blocks that prevent us from understanding these concepts, which I think is something that we touched on a little bit when we spoke the last time, is that the 3D reality is kind of restricting in certain ways to higher knowledge and higher awareness and higher understanding. And there are certainly things that are taking place that are increasing people's frequency and vibration without them ever having to do anything. There's certainly some element of that happening, though it seems to be kind of step by step, and it's kind of a slow trickle versus some groups of people who are consciously choosing to take steps that break down those barriers so that they can walk into this amazing field of knowledge that is just beyond what we're kind of programmed to see initially.
Yeah, absolutely. We have such almost within the 3D reality, and as we're coming here and not remembering who we truly are, and then we get stuck within this, matrix paradigm. We have such a tunnel vision on what life, should be or supposed to be. But what we're trying to do here, you, Dan, I, myself, everybody, is just broaden that perspective, expand it, like see what else is out there, as opposed to it being too scary. Like if we can understand that all of these capabilities that are within us are only going to like aid and help in our evolution of consciousness. It can be scary to not know, because you have no idea what's gonna be presented to you in the unfamiliar realms that we're kind of gonna jump into. But it also can be so empowering once you kind of disintegrate, or at least push away some of the obstacles and boulders that have been in your way for so long.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that maybe, go ahead.
I was just gonna say it's a very empowering experience when you commit to it.
Yes.
Absolutely. And it's empowering as it is, there are like challenges that arise on the way. And I think that starting kind of off with jumping into the shadow side and shadow work, I think is going to be really beneficial. Dan and I have taped an episode on shadow, but it's coming up, and it's coming up so blatantly right now. And I just want to share a story actually really quickly before we jump into the shadow. This was probably about 2 years ago. We were living in LA, and this was like the height of my beginning to open my eyes. The veil is lifting. I'm doing a lot of meditations at night, specifically like sleeping, trying to just hear my higher self and spirit guides. And I remember one morning, Dan used to get up so early for like 6 a.m. clients training that like his alarm clock would go off at 4:30, and I'd hear it and kind of wake up, but like never fully get up with him. But between that state of like me half asleep, half awake is when I really was in like deep theta. And we can kind of get that. But that theta is the consciousness state that's just in between the dreaming and the waking. And I remember asking, like, just trying to hear like my spirit guides, like, what do I need to work on within this ascension practice? What do I need to work on? And immediately I heard shadow work. And I was like, ooh, okay. And I dove so hard into the shadow work. I like signed up for online courses and classes and did a whole bunch of stuff. But that's how I knew how important kind of disintegrating this aspect of myself that I had hidden for so long, my kind of true authentic nature just wanting to shine, but me putting it behind me, putting it in that shadow, not to be seen because I was too afraid of being judged. Really, that's really what your shadow is. And ever since then, I mean, I think every day is really looking at the shadow aspects of myself, and really on a macro scale, what's going on in the collective as well.
Yep, absolutely. The shadow comes up a lot in my own, just like you, in my own personal spiritual practices. The shadow work, the shadow element is something that I frequently choose to work with and acknowledge, because when we push it back and away, so to speak, it does nothing but percolate. That's how I see it. It just sits there and it bubbles, and it starts to build up some pressure and steam until it has to be manifested in our reality somehow. And the shadow is something that I'm seeing, as you mentioned about the collective, in my clinical practice, both in person and virtually. The clients that I'm working with are the shadow element is coming through as kind of a key part of their process that needs to be worked through in order to move to the next steps. So the shadow is one of the things that can block us from getting to those higher frequencies and that higher vibration of consciousness, physical and mental body. So the way I see the whole shadow element is that it's really the thing that keeps us polarized and contained within a 3D level of reality and consciousness. And the picture that I get is we have a 2-dimensional plane, right? A line. And then there's us, the 3D structure on top of that line. And everything above us in the higher dimensions is filled with light. And that light is shining down on us. And if you zoom away from that and you look at this little structure of you, a 3D version of you on a 2-dimensional plane, and the light is coming down on it, there's always going to be a shadow.
Yes.
Doesn't matter what angle you look at it from, there's always going to be a shadow. So we cannot deny that the concept of yin and yang, the positive, the negative, the light, the dark, in a 3D world, we all have a shadow.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And it's not necessarily a bad thing.
No.
I think that is misinterpreted within this kind of spiritual community where everybody wants to have love and light, love and light, love and light. I am all for that. I'm all for positivity and gratitude and being thankful. I do think those, having those constructive thoughts can raise our frequency, but you can't push your shadow aside. It needs to be integrated. The shadow's there to really teach us and help us learn. We're watching a show on Gaia called The Flower of Life with Drunvalgo Melchizedek. Have you heard of it?
I have. Yeah. I haven't watched it, so fill me in.
It's mind-blowing. And I think we're maybe on episode like 22 or 23, and it's taken us like a year to go through, Jesse. It is very dense information.
It's 36 episodes of just
wow.
It is so profound. I think you'd love it. I mean, the concepts he breaks down every single thing from like the Lucifer encounters to the chakra system to duality, everything. It's profound, but it's very, Dan and I can only watch like 20 or 30 minutes.
A certain amount.
Information.
Yeah.
Have you been diagnosed with an autoimmune disease and struggled to find ways to manage it naturally? Do you suffer from long-term digestive problems and have failed to find answers from mainstream or functional medicine? Are you experiencing long COVID or suspect you may have been adversely affected by products designed to treat or prevent this or other illnesses? The Immune Reset Program offers a proven track record with unparalleled results for those who suffer from chronic unresolved illnesses. This program is unlike any other, offering a comprehensive deep dive into every aspect of health, the immune system, the gut, and our mindset around healing. It comes with everything you'll need to quickly and permanently resolve challenging illnesses, including all lab work and custom compounded bioactive herbs and supplements in powdered form made just for you, without having to take dozens of pills, capsules, soft gels, or tinctures. Dr. Luke Terra, founder of the Evocentric Wellness Programs, offers a free initial consultation to deeply explore your health issues and help you develop a plan to move forward and address your most pressing health concerns today. Our Deep Life listeners will receive an additional month of care, a $3,000 value, absolutely free, when you join our program using the Deep Life podcast link. Visit the link in our show notes to access this incredible offer, or go directly to evocentrics.com/deeplife. That is Evocentrics, EVOCentrix.com/deeplife, DEEPLIFE, to find out more and book your free call today.
But we were watching it, and one of the ladies' questions to him was saying, like, I can't fathom that God, source, divine being, whatever you want to call it, like, put the darkness here. Like, I don't understand how there can be evil. And he was like, you have to just remove your human kind of concept of what darkness is. Like, to God, I'm using that in quotations mark, it's neutrality. There is no good and the bad. You need the light and the dark to balance one in each other so that you can learn from the polarized aspects. If you have too much light, you're going to be you're not going to be balanced. If you have too much dark, you're not going to be balanced. So it's really just having that neutrality as best as I can.
Finding the balance, perfect way to put it. Because if it's too much light, there's no catalyst for growth.
Yes,
So you would just never evolve.
Yep.
But if there was
Yep.
too much darkness, you also wouldn't evolve because you'd just probably kind of crumble and waste away. So it's like
Yeah.
finding that balance. The example he used was that like when someone's having a baby, you don't want that baby to be born before 9 months because it won't be ready. And if you don't want it to wait too long after 9 months because it won't be right. Like you want it to be born at exactly the right time. And for that to happen, there needs to be growth and development, but there also needs to be sort of a challenge to slow it down.
Yep.
So that it times up, and that everything in the world is literally just things unfolding in perfect time. And that only happens if you have the right amount of balance of pressures coming from both sides.
It's like a check and balance system.
Yes.
In the 3D world. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so interesting, right?
Yeah, it really is.
It's not something it seems like our initial instinct is to be fearful of our dark side or the shadow. There's a very interesting book. I meant to bring it in here so that I could remember the author, but I'll get you the author's name. I don't know if either of you read it. It's called Existential Kink.
No.
It's amazing. It's a great book. The basic idea is that our shadow side is like something that it's not necessarily something that's bad. It's something that's there kind of as a challenge to us. And it also, the way that it's phrased is the author came to this realization that God must be kind of kinky because he created like all of this dark stuff that we can exist within. And it must not have been created for no reason. It was created for part of the experience,
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And so the more we embrace our shadow side, the easier life becomes, because when we're resisting an element of who we are and what we are, it just, I mean, that's one of those blocks that keeps us from moving forward, because we're so resistant to just accepting the whole experience, who we are in our entirety, which is not just the light, but it's also, there's the dark element to who we are. And I think some of it is going back to the idea that we signed up for certain things when we came here. So a lot of our shadow elements, I think, are integrated from what we wanted to experience when we came here. And then I also believe that our current life, a good chunk of the shadow is accumulated over the course of both this lifetime and then the lifetimes prior.
For sure.
And when I've been able to, in meditative experiences, get myself all the way back to my first incarnation here on Earth.
Wow.
And there are still missing pieces to it. So I have not put the whole picture together, but I've got a pretty good view of what I came here as. And then some of the things that happened in that initial lifetime that took me from what I considered to be a more pure divine being into something that was more polarized.
Sure.
And every lifetime that I've lived since then has just been a recycling of those initial traumas and events that took place that rocked me and took me out of a place of neutrality and put me into a place of polarity.
Sure.
So just knowing that and having that is, to me, like super fascinating, because I'm able to at least identify some of the things that led to who I am today. That also leads me to just jump on this idea that it is entirely possible for us to try time travel and to find ourselves in different places. It's definitely not a difficult thing to achieve. So I'll just throw that out there as a little seed that
I love it.
Yeah.
Yes. It's all happening now. You
Yes.
just
Right.
Yeah, we're entangled.
We
with
can
all of
tap
it.
into it all. It's
Yes.
it's all available.
absolutely.
But I think that it's more available to us when we have done the work to raise our frequency and vibration.
Yeah, it's like
We're
transcending
circling
the-
back now. Yes.
But I think it's so interesting because like your experience and going back and looking at past lives and sort of the progression, even though there is no linear time, you can still see your lives in a progression because that is what is useful to you. And I think that how you're describing your journey kind of parallels the journey of the collective, where there's been exactly that. We went from being very close to the light and source, and then finding this separation and duality. And now it seems like we're at a point where our society's never been more polarized, but that is what's forcing us to look at the things that we didn't want to look at. And whether that's, war and separation or racism or inequality and of any kind, just the way we're treating the planet, like all of these things are being brought to a head right now, and we have to look at it. There's no other option. We can't keep sweeping that under the rug and imagining we can just keep kind of raping the earth and going to war with each other. So I think it's so fascinating, but it seems like such a catalyst for growth and such an amazing opportunity.
Yes. As you were saying all of that, I come back to my traditional Chinese medicine education, and I refer a lot to the yin and the yang, the black and the white, the positive, the negative.
Mm-hmm.
That symbol, one of the principles of yin and yang is that yin can transfer to yang and yang can transfer to yin in an instant. It's an energetic tipping point that gets reached, which then sends us into the other end of the spectrum. And what you were saying, Dan, is, to me, makes me think, well, we're reaching one of those tipping points.
Yeah.
We pulled ourselves so far away from the light, and we've experienced some probably of the darker elements of who humans can be. And it's now starting to kind of like slingshot back, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. I think once, if we could just back up for 1 second so that we can kind of talk about how it's beneficial, or at least I should probably talk for myself. Shadow work that I've been doing for the past couple of years has been beneficial, obviously not only for myself, but is allowing me to look at the earth and the universe much differently. So I think that that's maybe something that we can at least guide our listeners. Like the reason why you want to do shadow work, I should say, like if that resonates with you and you feel like you want to, do this for your own whatever reasoning, it's so beneficial, even though it is looking at your darkest parts, but it's breaking those dark parts down so that you can integrate them, love yourself, forgive yourself for not knowing things that you didn't know. And then it allows you to forgive other people because you also realize that they have their own shadow and are just projecting their own internal world externally. But it's also given me just such a more softer view of the planet. And although I want to go and run and save all the rainforests and stop hunger, stop the war, stop poverty, I know that the only way that I can do that is working on myself. Because if I work on myself, then that in turn is going to help the vibration that also is entangled with everybody else. It comes around full circle.
Yeah. Yes. To me, the importance of shadow work or acknowledging the shadow, bringing the shadow to the surface, working with that element of who you are is to create a more cohesive completeness with yourself. And when you are when you are cohesive and complete within yourself, you are operating at a totally different vibratory frequency than somebody who is disconnected from their self and not fully aware of who they are and why they are. When we look at our shadow, it gives us an opportunity to understand why we do certain things, why certain patterns and loops are presented, why certain challenges come our way. They are what we come to realize is that they are all actually generated by us. All of our struggles and our challenges are generated at the deepest level by, all of my problems are generated by me in some way or another, right? And those problems are just going to continue until I decide to take a different approach, to look at different parts of who I am.
Yes.
With what's happening in terms of the collective shift into a higher collective consciousness, we are all kind of being, the shadow is being highlighted because we're being pulled away from its grips in a sense. But when that happens, it all shows up. It all shows up because it's not just going to go away without coming past us. So in order to get to this higher consciousness, we have to be willing to work on the things that are keeping us anchored down, down low. Does that make sense?
It does.
The way I see things too is that really our shadow is just driven by primal patterns, primal instincts, primal fears that all start the most primal of instincts is fear for survival. And that is the basis of what the shadow is built off of. The fears can all be traced back to surviving. It's a very human concept, right? It's also a very like 3D concept. Like if I am not here, I'm not anything.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
It's either all or nothing. If I don't survive, then I don't exist anywhere. That's like the primal 3D concept that we are being given an opportunity to see differently, to see a level above that, to say, ooh, that all of these shadow elements, all these primal elements of myself are there as part of the experience, but that's pretty much what they are. They're part of the experience. And I can choose how I want to integrate them. They are not choosing for me. Although they are choosing for us until we decide to provide it,
until
right?
you become aware of it.
Right. Yeah. They're choosing unconsciously because we aren't aware of them. They're pushed down so deep until we begin to kind of dig them out.
Yeah. I don't know if this aligns with your views too on the shadow element, but the way I kind of understand it and see things is that the shadow is working primarily through our subconscious, whereas our ego and our conscious selves are more of what's projecting light out. So the subconscious is really good at tricking us to think that reality is being manufactured for us, when really it's the subconscious doing it. And the shadow works through the subconscious to express itself. Yeah. And the subconscious manifests in our reality in order to express itself.
Definitely. That makes complete sense. I didn't realize it like as nicely as you put it until you had kind of emailed it over to us. And I was like, yes, that makes sense.
Right.
For sure. Yeah. Because I used to always get really confused about like my shadow versus my ego. And we can kind of talk about that a little bit because it's tricky.
It is.
So sneaky. And I told Dan this the other day. She's on my shit list 90% of the time, but I also love her. I also love her. Like, I know she's trying to protect me, but like, I've got to move her
Yeah.
over from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. I keep telling her she's not going anywhere, because I do believe like the ego, once you begin getting healthier, becoming more aware, and different perspectives begin to come into the light when you're, you know, changing patterns and habits that you've been doing for decades. The ego is knocking at that door being like, what are you doing? Where are you going? Don't leave me. And I think that it's just as scared. It doesn't want to leave you, but your ego's never gonna leave you. You just need to have it not be in the driver's seat anymore. You just gotta say, my higher self's taken over. You can come for the ride, but you just don't have as big a say in the things that we do any longer.
Yeah. Yes. The higher self, as you were saying that, it just kind of makes me think, you know, the higher self is an embodiment of both, you know, the ego, conscious and subconscious, you know.
Yeah,
Exactly.
they're all integrated.
Yes. And interestingly too, earlier, Dan, you were talking about neutrality. And one of the things that that's kind of been playing in my mind is that reaching a state of neutrality is our entryway into a fifth dimensional reality, because we're able to not feel polarized by our life or the things that are happening around us. And instead we are choosing a state of neutrality. It's acknowledging perhaps the feelings that are coming forward. It may be acknowledging that our instinct is telling us to feel a certain way, but it's choosing neutrality.
Yeah.
That makes all the difference.
Definitely.
Absolutely. And I think that like, as you do that and as you embrace more neutrality, I think a lot of the fear of the ego is that like, maybe you're losing your individuality and like who you are.
Yeah.
But like, you can still be neutral and do things you enjoy. And you can go like, enjoy life. It just doesn't have to be so polarizing, and it doesn't have to be like scary. It's just, I don't know, just something I just thought of.
Yeah, totally. And okay, so the more we ignore the shadow, though, like the more that we're ignoring that is the more that we're where was I going with that? We're just kind of
staying in low frequency.
Yeah, we're denying ourselves an opportunity to level up.
Yes. I was gonna say we can kind of talk about like why it's important to integrate the shadow, do shadow work to reach, you know, different levels of consciousness as opposed to staying in that lower frequency. Because I want to talk about the yogic practices as well and go over some.
Let's do it. Yes.
So yeah, I think that exactly like we kind of talked about, the shadow, it is a lower frequency because it does kind of like to keep us in victim mentality with that fear, that anger, the control, but all of those feelings and emotions carry the frequency, and that's what the lower vibratory fields are that we were talking at the very beginning of the podcast. That's where the collective is now. That's where most of humanity is now, and look at what's happening. Not that it's not necessary, but it also has to come to light for things to get better.
Yes, absolutely. I guess the idea is that without doing any of the work with your shadow element, or even just beginning to understand it, it's a big part of you that is keeping you in a certain frequency.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. It could. Yes. It's there. We all have them. This isn't just for spiritual people. It's every single person. And it can be worked through. It can be challenging, but also very rewarding and empowering, like you said, to kind of get to
self-discovery leads to empowerment. Empowerment, when we feel empowered, we are operating at a higher frequency.
Yes.
Oh, feelings and emotions and the way that we feel about ourselves is a frequency state. So the better we feel about things, the more self-worth we have, the more gratitude we have, the more the more trust we have, the more truth we live in. Those are the things that are elevating us up to a higher state of being.
Yeah.
And that kind of segues in, I guess, to the yogic practices.
Yes.
And I wanted to discuss yogic philosophy, I guess, because out of everything that I've studied and everything that I've learned, to me, the yogic 8-limb philosophy is kind of the way. It is the route that you can take that gets you to the higher frequency. It gets you to a state of being that you are practicing different concepts and techniques that are elevating you every single time you practice them.
I love it. Like go super deep into this, because this is new for me. I really don't know anything about it. And what's so interesting is I do think this is the universe. Dan and I keep getting signs to do yoga or to look more into it. So
we were talking about this the other day.
Literally on Sunday.
Very called to.
Yeah. Cool.
So tell us.
So I'm excited that
well, this is good timing. Yeah, this is going to work out great. Yogic. Let's start with that category. Yogic practices, yogic philosophy. In the US, we think of when somebody says yoga, we think of going to a yoga class and doing the poses, and like that's what yoga is. And when you really start to dig in a little bit more into yoga, you realize, oh, that's just one element of it. So Ashtanga is the eight-spoked wheel of yoga. And each of those spokes represents a different element of yogic practice. So to be a yogi is to practice a philosophy, a lifestyle philosophy that incorporates the 8 elements of a yogic lifestyle.
Okay, that makes total sense.
So when we go to yoga class, we are just tapping into one little chunk of what yoga really is. Yogis transcend out of the third dimension all the time, and many of them operate in higher realms all the time. Many of them have the capability of going in and out of realities as they please. Many of them have what would be considered magic powers. This is all because they have dedicated themselves to practices that raise their frequency and raise their vibration.
I'm getting chills.
Yeah. The more you, and like we were saying earlier, the more you raise your vibration, the more you change your frequency, the more everything changes for you, and the more access you get to knowledge and understandings of things beyond what maybe you've been given access to so far. There's a lot of things to access. There's a lot of information to access. There's a lot out there that you just have to say, well, I want some of that. I would like some of that access, please. And then you have to figure out how to get the access. And in my experiences, incorporating a yogic lifestyle is the easiest way to daily work on raising your frequency.
Okay, wow, all right.
So there are absolutely more esoteric elements of a yogic philosophy. I'm going to talk today more about the core, like the core teachings, the core concepts, because I think they are easy enough to understand that anybody who's listening can write them down and say, all right, I'm going to start integrating some of this stuff and I don't need really anybody to teach me. It's just, I just need to teach myself and be invested in the process.
I think that's going to be great and so helpful.
Yes. So we think of yoga, like I said, of being the physical poses. A lot of people also think of yogis, a practitioner of yogic philosophy, a yogi. Yogis are often portrayed as sitting lotus style and meditating.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think one of the next conceptions of perceptions of yogis is that meditation is the way that everything gets done. But in reality, meditation falls much, much further down in the list, in the order of those 8 limbs.
Okay.
The first 2 limbs of yogic principles and philosophies are called, number 1 and number 2 are yamas and niyamas. And there's an amazing book, very easy to read, called The Yamas and the Niyamas by Deborah Adele. And she breaks down the yamas and the niyamas in a very easy to read and understand short book. And it's great for everybody to have if you're interested in understanding more. The yamas and the niyamas can be broken down into several subcategories. So I'm not necessarily going to go into all of the subcategories. That's best for like your independent reading, perhaps. But I'll give you the general concepts behind the yamas and the niyamas. Yamas is Y-A-M-A-S, and the yamas are a set of ethical standards that incorporate personal integrity, personal behaviors, and personal conduct. It's basically, I believe that there's 5 subcategories. It's like the things that you want to do to just be a good human being.
Got it. Yeah.
And so yeah, right. It's probably the best place to start when you're trying to become something bigger and better, is to start acting just nice,
Yeah.
So the ethical standards, integrity, behavior, conduct, those are the yamas. The niyamas are a set of self-disciplines that are focused more on spirituality. So these are things that you implement into your own inward process. That the yamas are more external. They're the things that you do for others, or when you're interacting with others. It's the way that you conduct yourself in the outside world. The niyamas are the internal self-disciplines that you put in place that assist you in connecting with your deepest spiritual elements.
Got it.
And when we practice self-discipline and we connect ourselves with our deepest spiritual elements, we are once again shifting our personal frequency, because the niyamas are they're same concept as the yamas. It's the things that you do because they just make you a better person.
Yeah. Makes sense.
The next limb, or the next spoke, is asana. And asana is the postures, the poses. So really, when you're going to yoga class, you are going to practice asana.
Okay. Yep.
Although many yoga classes incorporate several of these limbs or these spokes. The postures, when in the previous podcast, I was discussing how to, the importance of regulating the body's energetic systems. And in Chinese medicine, we have Qigong, which is postures and flowing movements. And asana and yogic practice is the same idea. It is using the physical body, the physical and the energetic body together to increase not only your physical structure, but also your energetic properties.
Mhm.
So asana is a combination of physical and energetic, as well as a spiritual
Got it.
connection through the whole
Mhm.
process. Pranayama is breathing. So this is another spoke on the wheel. Pranayama is something that it can be very, very simple to practice in its basic forms. It can also be something that you perhaps want to have somebody teach you the proper methods to certain pranayama exercises, but breathing is one of the easiest ways for us to connect mind and body together.
Yeah.
So when we practice different breathing sequences, we are creating different responses in our brain and body, and breathing itself can actually take you into a transcendental state.
Yeah.
I don't know, for the first time ever, a few months ago, I experienced a somatic breathing event, and somatic breathing is the opposite of what I usually do for meditation. Meditation for me is very slow, deep, rhythmic box breathing.
Yep.
Somatic breathing is quite the opposite. It is very rapid and forceful breathing that doesn't stop. And each breath just flows into the next. And you're actually breathing the opposite way as we usually teach. We usually teach to, like, when you inhale, your belly should go out. And then as you exhale, it should go in. In somatic breathing, you reverse that. So you kind of have to be thinking at first of how this is working. And, but once you get into that rhythm, there's a certain sequence to it. I can't remember the exact minutes that you do it, but the first round you do like 4 minutes of the breathing, and then you do 2 minutes of rest. And then the next one you do 2 minutes of breathing and then 1 minute of rest. Or no, I'm sorry, it gets longer in breathing, less rest time.
Okay,
but
yeah.
the wild things can happen. And your body actually, from what I experienced, especially I was in a group setting, so there were like 60 people there.
Wow.
And what started happening is, now that I'm thinking back on it, elements of people's shadow hurt elements of themselves, trauma elements that are within them started coming out with those breathing exercises. So in like a somatic breathwork workshop, we'll say, people are releasing energy. They are releasing trauma that's been stored within them through the breathing, and people are crying and people are screaming and people are like really like having a very profound, deep experience. And mine was also profound, but everybody's going to have a different set of responses based off of what needs to happen in that moment. But just the breathing element and breathing in certain patterns and certain rhythms has the ability to take us other places and to create very like profound physiological responses in our body.
Yes.
Also, interestingly, when you do somatic breathing, it increases the amount of DMT that your lungs are producing.
Okay.
And so many of the transcendental states are psychedelic in nature because we have the capability of creating psychedelic chemicals within our body just through breathing.
Right.
So
yes.
I find that pretty fascinating as well. So just by breathing, you can have a psychedelic experience, and we call that like a transcendental moment. But transcendental and psychedelic may kind of be the same thing, in many regards.
Yeah.
So
the fact that we do it ourselves shows you it's pretty important.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Like anything we can do for ourselves or that is available from the earth, to me, it's a no-brainer. It's like, okay, well, they're there for a reason.
Yes, definitely.
I think we should be doing something with this. Yeah, it's a great point. Going back to the yoga stuff, because I tend to digress very easily. We're moving into more of the spokes on the wheel that are less about the physical body and more about the mind and soul.
Okay.
So the next heading is pratyahara, pratyahara, and pratyahara is the process of going internally. It is the process of withdrawing. It's practicing withdrawal from the external world and going internal.
Got it. Mm-hmm.
Parenting can be stressful and even overwhelming, especially if you have an overly sensitive child. What if there was a way to better understand, guide, and nurture your child's unique sensitivity and emotional intelligence to set them up for success on their developmental journey? Rooted Rhythm's signature course, Tuned In, offers a transformational process for parents of highly sensitive, super feeling, wise, and empathetic children. You know, Dan and I don't have children of our own, but we were both highly sensitive children growing up. And we know firsthand how difficult it can be to feel and process emotions in a productive and constructive way at such a young age. Recently, having gone through the Tuned In course, we both took away so much valuable information and practical tools we could utilize to reparent ourselves and to understand how to better use our sensitive nature to deepen our connection to ourselves as well as the world around us. The Tuned In course teaches parents concrete skills to meet their sensitive kids' needs in moments of intensity, increases their ability to connect deeply with their children, and supports a process of inner healing to shift how they relate to parenting. Each module offers unique grounding and embodiment meditations, lectures full of both evidence-based and practical content, and supplementary exercises to support in the implementation of new skills. Parents who have taken this course report walking away from the experience feeling relaxed in their being and confident to parent their children in a way that both feels most true to them as a parent, as well as most supportive for their children. If this resonates with you as a parent or simply for yourself, we are excited to offer our listeners $100 off of this transformational course. Click the link in our show notes, which goes directly to the Rooted Rhythm Tuned In course website, and enter the discount code DEEPLIFE, all one word, to receive $100 off of the Tuned In course.
And certainly you can do this. This can be practiced in a lot of different ways, and you can withdraw from the external world, but still operate within it. So this isn't meaning like you must go into a room by yourself and not come out for a while. It's not necessarily that. It is figuring out, mastering, being able to take yourself out of all of this external stimuli and reside within yourself.
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
And to just be able to do that. The next principle is dharana. Dharana is focusing on concentration, slowing your mind and concentrating on single elements.
Okay.
So we pull ourselves away from the external world, and then we choose to zoom in on an object, a thing, a concept, an idea, and slowing our mind repeatedly so that we can just hone in on that one speck that we are wanting to focus on.
Yeah.
Which then leads to a concept called dhyana, which dhyana is meditation.
Oh, okay.
Dhyana is when you get when you have drawn yourself away from the external world, when you have slowed your mind to begin concentrating on a single focused object or thing or concept, when that goes uninterrupted, then you have reached a state of meditation or dhyana.
Got it. Yes. Okay. Yep.
From dhyana, then you can move up into the final level, which is samadhi. Samadhi is transcendence. It is connecting to the divine. It is, you have put all of these principles and philosophies into place, and you've practiced them, and all of them are raising and changing your personal vibration and frequency to a state in which you are kind of free from the shackles of the 3D operating system.
Sure.
Essentially, like going through these steps is your way of breaking out of the matrix, if you want to think of it that way. You know, it's your steps. These are your steps, because they all change your consciousness, and they all change your frequency.
Absolutely. And I love that you broke it down, because I'm, like I said, I had no idea what these foundational principles were. It's like,
yeah,
okay, I'm doing almost all of them. I just didn't know the words.
Right.
And now that I know, and you dissected them, it's like I can dive deeper in them to really start integrating them and paying more attention. But what I think is really cool, almost in an aspect or a way, it's like, if breath work kind of calls to you, like, start there, just start pranayama breathing. And then that's gonna almost raise your frequency a little bit more, that you're gonna want to tap into the Dharma. So it's like, you don't, because anything with spirituality and wellness, I mean, regardless of anything, can feel very overwhelming and daunting if you look at it as, oh my God, I have to do everything all at once. It almost has to be integrated at a slower pace that's going to be beneficial and sustainable for someone to have the trajectory of ascension or reaching their higher self. Because if I were to look at this and think that, okay, I have to go and do all of this within the next week, I wouldn't even try to do it, because it would be too overwhelming. So picking and choosing, I think, is that kind of how you would like interpret it, or kind of guide people into, you know, the best way as to begin these kind of practices?
Sure. Yeah. I think that it's important for an individual to follow the steps that feel right for them, you know, and to not feel like, oh, I must do something this way and it must work for me because that's how it works. It doesn't have to be like that. I think there are some important things that have to take place before you can cross a certain threshold in this whole ascension process. And those are the more three-dimensional concepts, the more polarizing elements of life have to be addressed before we can cross that threshold into something that is more transcendent and more awakened and more tuned in. So I like the concepts of the yogic, the 8 limbs, is like that we start with stuff that is more human, you know, like ethics, standards, self-discipline, postures, breathing. And then when you have done those or started to incorporate those, then it becomes much easier to tap into those other levels. It's not saying that you can't, but I will tell you, I mean, when I think back on my own experiences, trying to jump into deep meditation when I didn't have I was not an energetic match for where I was trying to get to. And so that can lead to a lot of frustration and resistance in people, because they're like, well, this isn't working.
Yes.
Right, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
that was me. I like was in and out of meditation for like a year, and I was like, I can't. I literally was like, I can't do this until I
Yeah.
had worked through other things, and I find that with a lot of people that I talk to, it seems to be common. It's very hard. I also think the concept of meditation is skewed, and it's been kind of glorified to be something that it's not. That's a different conversation. But exactly like you're saying, it's almost like piece by piece, everything is going to come together as you do it and align to what feels most natural for you. But yeah.
Yeah, the best ways I think that I coach and guide people who I'm working with is through, I mentioned this earlier. I think one of the best ways to bring yourself out of anxiety or out of like a scattered frequency is through breathing and breath work. So
Yes.
that's something that that's one of my go-tos. It's like, okay, well, let's start with breathing. Like, let's just acknowledge our breath. Let's work through our breathing. From there, I think anybody who's on any sort of even remotely awakened path believes that there are certain standards that they want to practice that make them a good person. You know, like most people want to be good people.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It all kind of starts with that. Like, let's start with trying to be a good person and understand ourselves and know how to connect with our own body, and then start leveling up from there into bigger concepts, bigger energies, bigger places.
Yeah, like diving into this esoteric ascension practice, and I'm so curious of your research and the classes and mastering this Kuji-Kiri.
Yeah, I was gonna say, when we read your bio for the first episode, I was like, I don't know what that is. I've never heard of it.
Yeah,
I can't wait. And when you put in little like parentheses, like it's awakening that like light body and like the Kundalini awakening, I'm really excited about this because do you know who Aaron Abke is?
No, I don't.
I feel like he's kind of like newer to the spiritual scene within this last like year. We watched him on Gaia a couple times. He has his own podcast. He was like a very strict like Christian like pastor's son and was like gonna be a pastor, and then just kind of went the complete opposite direction, realizing that religion was just too confining and separating, and had this awakening and had like a Kundalini awakening, I think like 2 or 3 years ago. But I'm taking a like a webinar class with him on Sunday, actually, about like moving from 3rd density to 4th density heart chakra.
Cool.
So I'm very excited. I feel like maybe this is a good preparation before that.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. It's going to tie in. It's going to tie in for sure. Yogic practices and philosophies kind of bleed over into more esoteric practices. And esoteric is just meaning like it's meant for a very small group of people. It's like select people will understand these concepts. So they are more esoteric in nature. I'm sure there are a lot of esoteric practices that I'm not even aware of because, again, they're kept within a small group in a sense. The information in these practices is not given to everybody because it's not intended for everybody. So once an individual starts incorporating the yogic philosophies and principles, and they start elevating themselves to a higher baseline frequency just because they're operating with good morals and ethics, and they're taking care of their body, and they're doing the breathing, and they're doing the meditation, then there's levels above that. A lot of many people may have heard this phrase called a Kundalini activation or Kundalini awakening or Kundalini rising. This is a yogic principle and philosophy. The Kundalini is the coiled serpent of energy that goes from our root chakra up to our crown. And as this energy, this kundalini, the snake of energy rises up in our body, it activates each one of the chakras. And when your kundalini rises all the way to the crown, it has activated each one of those main chakra centers in your body. And when you do that, you become a complete unit. That is your light body activation. It is, you have taken the primal essence of who you are, which is light, and you have generated it, and mastered it, and nourished it, and taken all of the steps that you need to take in order to facilitate the movement of that energy up from the most primal elements of you, because our root chakra, our sacral chakra, those are primal energy centers that govern our primal motives and desires. And if you can facilitate the movement of your own energy up into the higher chakras, once you surpass the heart is the chakra that is separating primal from higher level consciousness. And the heart is kind of the bridge. The heart chakra is the bridge between the 3D reality and the 5D reality. It separates us from basic to advanced. And so when you start activating your throat chakra, your third eye chakra, your crown chakra, that's when you really start to level yourself up. A Kundalini awakening or activation, there are many who will say, you must be very careful with this. You must be prepared. And I 100% agree with that, because it's just not possible for us to jump from low level up to high.
For sure.
And also, if you, one of the interesting things about these types of practices that differs from something that we had mentioned earlier about like starting where you feel comfortable, in the more esoteric practices, it is very much, from what I have found, it's sequential. It's following specific steps and specific sequences, because if you try to jump around, it's not gonna work.
Yeah.
And also
rhyme and reason to those.
Yes. Yeah, because one leads to the next and one builds off of the previous. Yeah. Once we start a process of perhaps activating our light body, let's just say that, because there's all these different methods of activating your body of light, which is, again, just to refresh, it simply means that you have activated each one of your core energy centers, and you have embodied its concepts and its messages and its energies into your daily life, and it's now part of you. And when you master all of those, you kind of become this whole complete being that we say now you've activated your body of light. You have connected with, some will say, like the Christ consciousness grid of light. There's all these different ways that we can say it, but simple is, it's the activation of your light body. And when you do that, you're operating at a much higher frequency.
Yes, I love the way you described it. That's very, very, very helpful.
Yeah, you have to go sequentially though, and you have to follow the steps as they are, as we know they work. And these esoteric practices are not usually something that you just master in a couple of days. These are like big life-changing things that you commit to. So I'll talk a little bit about, more specifically, about the practice that that I worked through for, from start to finish. It took me about a year to complete my Kuji training. So there are many esoteric practices available. This is what I'm going to speak of is just the one that I stumbled across, because it's the way that the universe, it's the method that the universe wanted me to have. So it's the one that I got somewhere probably 3 years ago. I kind of had a very dramatic awakening moment, and it became clear to me that I was supposed to be leveling up my own game. And so I sought out a teacher who just happened to be there. And it was one of these, like, you hear of them through the grapevine. And so you're like, oh, I've forgotten that somebody talked to me about that one person. So I think I'm going to get in touch with her. And from there, you know, like the rest unfolds just magically for you. And that's kind of how it was. I say magically. At the same time, the first year that I worked with my master teacher was not rainbows and kittens. It was not like, it wasn't a fun
It
all the
wasn't all
time
love and
experience.
light.
No, it was very dark. It was very, very challenging in many different regards, because what I came to realize is that the damage that I had gone through in this lifetime and many before it, damage that was inflicted upon me and damage that I inflicted upon myself, had shut my heart down, right? And when your heart is closed, you've closed the bridge. You've made it impossible to go from your primal elements to your higher conscious elements.
Wow, yeah.
So you're never going to be able to like really get to a higher state of consciousness without opening your heart. And our heart has the ability to open and close on its own based off of what's transpiring around us and what we've been through. And it's very instinctual. The heart will know when it's in danger, and it will close that energy center off to protect you, the human.
Sure.
So opening that was my first step, right? And just being willing to open my heart again was the first step. And that took me a solid year of meeting with this healer and teacher. And this is where I learned everything about sound healing. This is where I learned really how to meditate. This is where the same master teacher is the one who initiated me into my first 2 levels of Reiki. And so this is a very influential person in my life.
Yeah.
And after working together for some amount of time, she presented me with an opportunity to really level up my game. And it was kind of like it was presented as, you have finally reached a level in which I can present you with this additional information, which, as like a young apprentice, in a sense, you're like, oh my God, I'm doing it. Yay. You know, like I've done something good. And it was super exciting. The technique, the process, the esoteric practice that she presented to me with is called Kuji-Kiri. Kuji-Kiri is an expanded version off of a technique, a style called Kuji-In. So Kuji-In is probably the more practical version. So if somebody wants to research what I'm talking about in the process, you can search Kuji-In, 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 and that will give you really simple steps, very similar to like the yogic 8 limbs, specific steps that you can go through to raise your vibration, to raise your frequency. Kuji-Kiri takes it a bit further, and it's a bit more intensive, and it takes longer, because Kuji-Kiri is not only a light body activation, but it's going to be the way that you can really unlock a lot of your magic, the magical capabilities that you possess, but that you just don't have access to without being fully operational, let's say. Sure. So you have to get yourself fully operational. And every step in the Kuji-Kiri sequence raises your vibration step by step by step, and it activates a new chakra each time. The process itself is initially a 5-month sequence. So you start and you don't stop. until you're done.
Wow.
And it will take at least 5 months to complete that initial sequence. And it involves some concepts that build off of our yoga conversation, which include mantra and mudras. So I'll talk about those real quick. Mantras are spoken phrases. Traditionally, mantras are written and pronounced in Sanskrit, which is, an ancient language originating in India and the East. Sanskrit mantras are said to be spiritually infused. They just speaking them gives off a certain frequency and vibration that connects you with more divine elements of the world and of the universe. There's a mantra for just about anything, and there's specific mantras associated with this Kuji-Kiri that you recite every single day. Every single morning at the beginning of your meditation, you recite this mantra 956 times, and you count along with your mala, right?
Oh yes,
so,
okay, yeah.
A mala is used for reciting mantras.
Yes,
and it's so that you can count as you go. So you repeat this specific mantra for the specific energy center of your being, and you learn a mudra. So a mudra is a hand gesture, and there are mudras for just about everything as well. But each one, by holding this hand posture or hand gesture, it again embodies a certain energy and frequency that aligns you with higher concepts, higher consciousness. And then there is a period of silent reflection. So meditation, the silent meditation follows your initial steps. And I'm kind of giving you just like the broad overview of it, but you repeat those so let's say I'm activating, to make it simple, I'm going to say, let's say I'm activating my root chakra. There will be a mantra associated with it. There will be a mudra that I hold while I meditate silently, and I ponder the concepts that are associated with my root chakra.
That makes sense.
Right? And so I do that for 12 days in a row.
Oh, okay, wow.
And then I take 2 days off. And then I move on to the next step, which would be then activating my sacral chakra. And I will do the same sequence. There's a new mantra that I learn. And so every day I work my way through my mala and I repeat it however many hundreds of times. And that the mantra element is really powerful, because the more you're repeating something in like this steady rhythm, the more you start to hear weird, interesting elements of it that you didn't hear when you were just saying it. It's like you start to tap into different sounds and different frequencies just by repeating this phrase. It's so fascinating to me.
Wow.
Frequency, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you go through this process of essentially connecting with yourself on an energetic, emotional, and physical level. Very much like with yogic practices, Kuji-Kiri has qigong exercises that you practice. There are different elements. There are different elements to the whole process that I maybe won't get into today because they're a little bit more complex. But what I'll say is, usually for these more esoteric ventures, we're needing somebody to kind of like show us the way.
Yeah.
Right.
I would never have been able to understand these concepts and figure this out myself. It just wouldn't have.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. But it also makes sense that there's these practices that have been around for thousands of years that work.
Yeah, absolutely.
And exactly like you were saying, Jesse, like this appeared at a certain time when you were ready and you had to go through one kind of like initiation before the next lesson could come. It's all preparation, it's all good, but here within this 3D reality and our ego, it's we have a hyper rushed, do now, hurry up, hurry up, hurry up. And it's like I got like a download one day. It's like slow is the speed of the soul.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to embody that, and I get the little pings every once in a while, and the universe speaks to me so much when I rush. I'm dropping things, I'm banging into myself. It's like the reminders, those that you don't think of them as, oh, I stubbed my toe, or oh, I dropped a glass. It's like those are your signs. Just slow down, pause, take a minute, and be present. But I love the way that you kind of uncovered all of those things. And well, I actually, this is kind of just a question that came into mind. How long would you say you've kind of been on this spiritual awakening journey? Like, when did you have that epiphany moment? And if we talked about it in the last episode, forgive me, I just like.
Yeah, I don't think we did. I guess that's a great question that may have a couple of different elements to it, because it's kind of, okay, I will say definitively in 2019, there was a very specific event that took place. I might as well share it because I've shared it with a lot of people. But this was like the catalyst moment when I know something happened. So I was driving in my hometown, and almost just out of nowhere, I mean, almost instantly in my field of vision, everything went tunnel visioned, and everything around in my peripheral vision took on a very indescribable pattern of lights and like patterns and lights. It was like an out of this world kind of moment, and it didn't go away. So I was able to continue driving, but I was very distracted. Yeah, I was driving. I could still see the road, but around around my focal points was all this very like crazy light morphing visual that was happening. And I remember making a phone call to somebody very close to me, and I said, I think I might be having a stroke. Like, I don't know what this is. I've never experienced something like this. And it was initially something that kind of threw me off, and it was a little bit like concerning. And I was convinced, that individual helped to reassure me that I probably wasn't having a stroke because, there were no other signs and symptoms, and I was still driving. And so I went home, and I would say probably 20 minutes after this event started, it ended, and it just, everything went back to normal, in air quotes. But when I look back on that was the moment that something happened.
Sure.
Something changed. That's when there was a very clear, it was almost as if like a portal opened up and some new element of me was being introduced into my life. When people talk about like drop-in souls, I don't know if you've heard that concept, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so there are times where I think like that may have been when I dropped in.
Oh, okay, yeah.
When the higher version of me dropped into this reality, because I was already on a holistic and spiritual path. I was already a practitioner. I was already, kind of embodying these healthier concepts and philosophies, but it was as if either I hit an energetic threshold that launched me somewhere totally new, or the universe opened up the gateway for me.
Yeah. Wow. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
And within a week, I had signed up for my first session with the teacher and the healer who like guided me through the next couple of years. And so those 2 years of, 2020 through 2022 were the years that I honed in on healing myself on the deepest levels possible, and then activating my light body and raising my consciousness to a level where I am now more of a match for the higher levels of my mission here, which is to assist, much as the two of you are, assisting with the collective awakening and subsequent ascension of everybody, because I don't think anybody's supposed to be left out.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, I love that. Yes, thank you for sharing that. I was curious, and I feel like it's going to kind of lead into this next portion that we're going to talk about as we wrap up kind of the last concept of, we have choices here within this, earth school. And I wanted to ask, because there's probably a lot of people who have these, pings of euphoria, light activations, DNA upgrades, or anything mystical that they're not sure what they are. And if they're not either aware or interested, I mean, depending on, what their soul chooses in this lifetime, they might push it off. Or if they're like, wait a minute, I want to tap into this, and they're choosing to look further into it. They're choosing to kind of raise their vibration, raise that frequency to elevate their consciousness. But also, if people are listening to this and they're like, whoa, this is not for me, I'm going to just choose to stay in the life that I have. That's okay. That's also their path.
It's wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like I don't remember if we were talking to you about it, but Deanna and I often speak when we first kind of had our like prolific awakening moments, and they come all the time, but years ago, we wanted to tell everybody, like, let's do the, like, you've got to look into this, do this. And then everybody just thought we were crazy. And it was like,
yeah,
all right, let's just maybe tone down this a little bit. And we started to realize that the only way that we're going to influence anybody is to heal ourselves, to be on this journey, individually and together, and then connecting with people like you and anyone else who's going to come into our path, so that we can just emanate what we're learning. And if people want to jump on board, amazing. And if not, that's okay too. And Dan reminded me another couple weeks ago, where I'm struggling a lot with someone in my family who is, I want to help them so badly, and like shake them and like, do this. Like, I want you to awaken in this lifetime. I want you to see what I see. And he's like, Elise, it might just happen. They might just awaken in the next life or the following life. It doesn't have to be this one. Just keep like shining your light and planting the seeds. If they awake, great. If not, they could do it another time.
Yep.
So yeah, let's kind of get into the power of choice, and we can choose to dwell in our past, in the low frequencies, the ego and shadow self.
Yeah.
Elevate
So fun.
And yeah.
Yeah.
It is
the power
kind of a school of life here.
It is. It's the, I'm often surprised when I am reminded that for a very long time, I didn't even realize the full extent of the power that I had through choices that I'm making. And it's not just the choices in my day-to-day routine, or choosing to turn left or to turn right at the stop sign. It's choosing. We can take choice, this amazing power that we have to choose. We can take it all the way down to very deep levels and say, in the most basic sense, we are choosing our reaction to everything.
Definitely.
To every single stimuli. We have the power to choose how we react, how we respond, how we feel, how we act. so often we catch ourselves in these like knee-jerk reactions and in impulsive emotional reactions or outbursts. And to me, that's just simply showing us that we have not yet mastered some of the skills that we need in order to really step into the power that we have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And a lot of those are the reactions or, overstimulation within a conversation or situations are stemming from either past traumas or past situations. It's exactly like we were talking throughout this whole, episode. If you don't integrate those traumatic experiences, whether that be on a huge scale or just something like someone said to you when you were younger, you're going to keep reacting in those ways. It's not a bad thing. It's just becoming aware and recognizing that that's happening. And if those things are happening and you're reacting in the same way over and over and over, that's creating a pattern.
Yep.
A pattern that may need to be, or hopefully could be broken if you're on this journey of ascension and looking to better yourself. I reacted 10 minutes before this podcast as I was like trying to get everything ready. And I was like, whew, okay, I just had one of my moments, and I apologized to Dan. I just need to get in my space of calming myself before the episode here. And I'm able to recognize them so more. Doesn't mean I don't have them. It's exactly like you said, there's still a little part that needs to be incorporated, integrated back. And it's just a reminder. It was just my higher self or guides reminding me.
Yep.
Still some work to do.
Very similar to what you said before, like the shadow is going to find ways to project itself into our reality so that we look at it.
Yeah. And then we have a choice on what to do with it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly.
That's what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
My choice was, oh gosh, I recognize this. Let me apologize to Dan. And then it's also, I used to get very upset with myself when I had reactions or I kind of word vomited something that I really didn't intentionally mean to say. But I realized getting upset with myself was never helping. I'm human. I'm still learning, and opportunities are going to continue to present themselves to me to show me how much I've grown and to give me other opportunities to react or say things differently in a different manner. It's all life just wants to give you the lesson to learn through them.
Yep. And we'll present them multiple times until a choice is made that aligns you with something different.
Yes.
That makes me think of this other kind of common theme that's coming through a lot that I'm seeing is that the less we choose to connect with who we really are, who we feel we are on a fundamental level, the less connected we are with our truest self, the more we loop through the same kind of scenarios, because the universe is like constantly giving us opportunities to choose a different route.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Sometimes louder than others, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it could be as simple as a conversation with, a neighbor, a friend, family member, or it could be something that's catastrophic with, accidents or mishaps, something like that. And I wish that there was a formula we could give everybody. Hey, look out for this. This is what this means. And unfortunately, there isn't really a manual for that because each individual on a soul level has different lessons to learn. I mean, I have a hard time deciphering my lessons. I wish I could tell you how to live and learn through yours, but I got my own that I'm dealing with.
Right.
But yeah,
I think it's important for us to acknowledge that we are all very unique and individual, and one of the choices that we have is to believe in ourselves, to believe in just how like great and unique and special we each are, or we have a choice to believe that the alternative, we I don't know where we got the initial idea that we are so limited in our choices.
Mhm.
And I don't know if that's, it's not just me, because I encounter a lot of people who sometimes need the reminder, like, well, that's completely your choice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. It's something I feel like you just see, like, even in like really simple, innocuous ways. Like maybe you start out and there's like 3 different ways you drive to work. And then just over time, you stop taking one of the ways. And it's like, well, I go this way or that way. And I'll go this way on Monday and Tuesday, and on Wednesday I go this way. And then eventually you just find yourself taking the same route every time and stop thinking about it and stop changing. And I think that we do the same thing on like every level.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. I think that I'm trying a little bit to make more choices myself, because I'm trusting that there is no right or wrong choice. And especially if it's like, I guess, a choice that I'm making at a lower frequency, it's going to represent itself to me to make a different one. But I felt so disempowered. And I think maybe a lot of the listeners can resonate with this, where I would ask my friends, my family, Dan, what should I do? What should I do in this situation? What should I do in this situation? Or, what should I have here or there? And I'd leave it up to them to decide for me almost. Where I feel like I am at a point where I'm so much more confident in myself making these decisions that I can do it, and it's going to present itself if it needs to. But I find that people, and this isn't a bad thing, because we want the human connection, we want opinions, but everybody starts to ask or look outside of themselves for other institutions to make these choices. And then it's like, yeah, everybody's just disempowered, and here we are running around with our heads cut off in a month.
Kind of, yeah.
Tying into like the shadow. It's like, yeah, we've got to almost believe in ourselves enough, piece by piece, building that momentum up to trust our inner guidance that it's not going to lead us astray. And if we, for some reason, make a lower decision, it's okay. We have the opportunity to choose better, to choose differently, and to become a better version, just a little, choices down the road. It's all happening for a reason.
Indeed it is. Yeah. The something that stood out as you were speaking is that we make a lot of choices that are rooted in our primal fear for survival. And when we do that, when we fail to acknowledge the fact that we don't ever end, we don't end. So just because a physical vessel gives out and we've used it up, we don't end. So there is, I think I posted something like this the other day, which is there's really no need to fear survival, because we're multidimensional, never-ending beings.
Yes.
But we're just programmed in this reality with this fear of survival. So all of these things that we're talking about today are steps and techniques and methods that we can practice on an individual basis that take us above that level of primal fear of survival into one where we begin to fully comprehend the spectrum of choices that we have that determine who we are and how our life presents itself. Like all of the choices determine our reality.
Yes. Yeah. And how it's going to unfold. And yes, I mean, that in and of itself is so empowering. And it's almost like a weight off your shoulders. Like, okay, if I don't, again, I don't want to use the word right. There is no right and wrong, but if I don't learn in this life, I've got more chances. Like, and whatever, like this life wasn't a waste. I've gathered so much information, so much learnings that I'm taking with me to further myself to whatever may come later on in the unknown, but it's getting there.
Yeah, I do think that it is entirely possible for every single person on this planet to reach a state of enlightened being within this lifetime. But if it doesn't happen within this physical lifetime, like you were saying, there's so much more to it. And so we just need to eliminate the fear that, oh, this is my only shot, this is my only chance, this is it, and if I don't succeed, then I'm gonna be a forever failure. It's I want to see as many people as possible take just the fear element out of their existence and out of their vocabulary and out of their feelings. But to do that is no easy feat. It's something that takes a lot of dedication, and I think a lot of dedication and a lot of commitment. Either that, or it could be really, really super easy for some people if you just know how to flip the switch.
Exactly.
I always try to be careful. Like, there's so many things that, like, it's taken me so long to learn. I'm like, I start telling people, like, this is such a long, painful process. It doesn't have to be. Like, I don't want to project that onto people. It could be really easy.
Could be, for some people, it could be super, super easy. I'm not one of them.
Us either.
Yeah, very reassuring.
I needed to take a lot of steps, and I needed to go through a lot of the process. The concept of just the power of my own choices has really taken on a whole new level, though, lately, because I've come to realize that the only way that I will ever experience suffering is if I choose to experience the suffering.
Yes. Wow. Yeah.
So powerful.
That is profound in and of itself. You're exactly right. Yeah.
But it's kind of a mind twister. Like, it messes with your brain when you're like, oh, you know what? Like, the only reason why I'm perceiving pain is because I'm choosing it.
Yeah.
The only reason why I'm perceiving this to be so bad is because I'm choosing it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh my gosh. Yeah. I feel like we could totally dive into there, but I know that we're going to wrap up here. That makes sense. The power of choice. And I feel like you have given so many, just fabulous examples and practical ways on how anyone, like you said, anyone can begin to raise their vibration, raise their frequency, because we do all have these capabilities seated within us to tap into the highest potential that were just hidden from us for whatever reason that may be. But we, the three of us, we're not special. Everybody has these capabilities. It's the choices, the way that we react, how we want to, work on ourselves. It's so empowering when we're able to realize we can be whoever we want to be, as opposed to what we've been told to be.
Yes. I think there's something really important that goes along with that, which is that once we realize that, there's this responsibility, in a sense, to share that with as many people as possible, because it's like, I want everybody to feel that same empowerment over who they are and what their story is and where they're at in their bigger mission or bigger story. We need to support one another versus giving into the fear and threat that somebody else is going to jeopardize our ability to survive. Because that's a big reason why we treat each other terribly sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a deep-seated fear that you are better than me, and that means I'm not going to survive.
For sure. I'm so glad that you brought that up. Actually, that is like, I feel like a huge concept.
And I think that kind of on top of that, every time we make that choice, every time you choose to see to the higher version of somebody else, you activate it a little bit. You give to it. Where you put your consciousness, energy goes, and
absolutely
part of that person.
I'm so glad that you said that. That's like the best way to articulate that the concept that I'm trying to portray. That's the best way to put it. Yep.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Mic drop right
Yeah,
now. There we go. Yeah.
Yep.
Oh my
Done.
gosh. Again, shaking, just so beyond grateful for you coming back on the show. Thank you for the wealth of knowledge, all of the tips that you shared. We want to tell everybody about Jesse Warner. So where can people find you?
The easiest way to find me on social media is on Instagram, jessewarner.quantumhealing. And you can follow me there, and then there's links in my bio and stuff like that where you can find my websites and learn how to work with me if you want to, both in person and virtually. And
Awesome.
I'm now in the process of the beginning stages of writing my first book, so maybe that'll be available sometime in the next I don't know how long. I'm not putting a timeline on it, but I realized actually kind of through the two of you that all of these concepts and all these things that I'm working on with people and with myself are worthy for everybody to have access to. So
Yeah.
I'm going to start compiling it all into a way that makes it really easy for people to understand, like the process that is available to them if they choose it.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Well, I am so excited for that. You'll have to keep us posted, but I absolutely, first person to buy your book for sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I like it.
Wait,
thank you.
That's amazing.
I have to say thank you to both of you for having me on a second time, because it really does mean the world to me. My new thing is really infusing my life with as much gratitude as possible. And the other day I was hiking for my morning walk, and I was just struck with this overwhelming feeling of gratitude for a handful of people in my life, of which the two of you were on that list. Like, you just kind of popped in because, number one, you're doing something that I really align with, and you're spreading messages that I really align with, and I think are super important for everybody to hear. And you're also giving me an opportunity to bring what I have to a larger audience, and that's incredibly valuable to me. So thank you.
We're thrilled, and we're every day we're very thankful for you and the universe for bringing us together. I don't think that it was a mistake, so I am so excited, even though I don't know what the future holds for all of us, but I do feel like we'll be connected and continue working together for a long time.
I think so. I look forward to it.
Thanks, Jesse.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, you guys. It was really good to see you.